Welcome to Mr. Restaurant. I'm Will Knox. I'm bringing you another tasty conversation about the restaurant biz. And I probably wouldn't even be Mr. Restaurant if it weren't for today's guests. I'm sure many of you know of the iconic LA restaurant Spago and celebrity chef Wolfgang Puck, but you may not know much about the brilliant and creative business partner who co developed the culinary Puck empire from the very beginning. I was fortunate enough to be there at the beginning. I met Barbara Lazaroff and Wolfgang when I found and negotiated the original Spago location overlooking the Sunset Strip. Barbara is famous. She's known as a designer, but she has many other talents. But as her design career took off, she really created jaw-dropping interiors for restaurants Spago, Chinois, Eureka, Granita, the Wolfgang Puck cafes, and countless other creative spaces around the world. And along with her former husband, Barbara received the James Beard Award for Restaurant of the Year and the Beard Award for Humanitarian of the Year. There would certainly be no Meals on Wheels or American Wine and Food Festival without Barbara's tenacity and her vision. And this will be the 39th year of her hosting Passover Seder at Spago to benefit Mazon, which is the Jewish response to ending hunger amongst all faiths and backgrounds in the United States and Israel. She is a Renaissance woman. She's a well-respected writer, speaker, entrepreneur, and even has been immortalized, and get this, in wax at Madame Tussauds. Now, I have a feeling I know what her greatest accomplishment has been, but I'm going to let Barbara tell us. And now, the one, the only, Barbara Lazaroff. Barbara, thank you so much for being here today on Mr. Restaurant.
You're very welcome, Will. I think that goes down as the longest I've kept silent.
Well, I'm telling you, I'm really glad you're here today. It's crazy. It's just crazy that
so many years late, 40 years,
yes.
40 years. Well, actually 41, because I had to build the restaurant in that 1 year.
Well, we're dating ourselves.
I don't care. What do I care? People can find anything out. I think it's absolutely absurd that women say, I don't want to mention my age or date myself. I'm very proud of it. I lost one of my closest girlfriends years ago. She would be ecstatic to be able to date herself, see her children and grandchildren and all of that. And my greatest accomplishment is exactly that, my children and my new grandson, because as a woman, I've created beautiful spaces. I have wonderful friends. I had wonderful parents but my children, and raising two children to be good citizens and go on to be accomplished. The only sad thing about being a mom is you have them all that time and then they go off and they're free, but you've done your job if they do that. But it's, you miss them a lot,
Well, if you've done your job, they're never too far away from the nest because they come back for a variety of different reasons, whether it's a Seder at Spago, whether
or money.
Hey, Mom, I need a little bit of kesef, a little money.
No, my older son and his lovely wife, Cameron and Kate, and baby Maxwell are coming for the entire month of May.
Baby Max. No, so that's
baby Maxwell.
He was just born?
Yeah, he's about to be 4 months old, so he'll be 5 months old when he's here. So as far as I'm concerned, they're coming to visit in May. I'm keeping him. I'm sending them home.
Now, when baby Maxwell grows to be able to be tactile, which would be maybe in about another 6 months, 8 months, whatever, are you going to let Maxwell touch that wonderful mane of yours? I'm telling you, when I first met you, Barbara, that was what attracted me, other than your style. That head of hair was incredible and still is.
Thank you. It was even longer then.
I'd
You
never
know,
met anybody who had long hair like that. I mean, that was the longest mane I'd ever seen.
baby Maxwell has already managed in only 2 months to get his fingers in it already. So, I'm not surprised. But,
Well, you can't get enough of any of that.
I think that I think it's going to be very joyful. I'm waiting for him to start to eat different things and taste different things. I was so amused when my kids were growing up because we had the orange food and the green food. We made mush out of the various vegetables. So we didn't even say those are the carrots. Those were just it's the orange food, that's the green food. And then my younger son, Byron, who went to Cornell Hotel Hospitality, who's, manages and works in the restaurants, who I just went to visit in France at L'Hosto de Beaumanière and now at Steilich in Vienna. I just got back a week ago, well, 10 days now. He's the kid.
Wait. Let me interrupt for 1 second. Le Beaumanière. Am I pronouncing that correctly?
Beaumanière. L'Hosto de Beaumanière.
That's where Wolfgang first started. Is that correct?
He started at an adjunct restaurant to it, and then he was there with Toulier, and then ironically we were married there. So it was very weird because I went back to see Byron, and that was the first time I was back from that big wedding.
How did you meet Wolfgang?
What do you mean? You mean how did he meet me?
Oh, okay. Here we go.
I hear
Tell me about
laughing. That. I hear people laughing.
That's Dr. D in the background.
Yeah, he should be laughing. Yes. You could have asked, how did we meet each other? And I wouldn't have corrected you.
How did you meet each other, Barbara?
Oh, very good, Will. That was excellent. I'm big on training men.
You've trained men before? Okay.
All women train men. We met in
I won't even get into that.
Yeah, don't get into that on this show. I was a biochem major. I was pre-med. I was going to be a physician, actually. And I had a friend who would see me all the time at this club reading my organic chem textbook. It's well documented, actually. And she was French. Oh my God, is this all you ever do? Why are you reading this huge book? What is this big book? And I explained to her, you have to get very good grades if you want to go to medical school. So that's how. And then she said, I belong to a club. And she kept asking me every week for a few months. And then one night I went. And Wolf was with some French guy next to him who tried to pick me up. And I was so offended by him that I just looked at the next guy that was across him. And I said, you want to dance? And I didn't realize that Wolf really didn't speak English very well. But that's a long, long time ago.
He was very puckish.
Yes, actually,
if he hadn't had the name, he'd still be puckish.
Yes. When the article first came out, I think it was Bon Appetit, and they mentioned like Puck in A Midsummer's Night Dream. He actually didn't know what that was. So I had to explain it to him that, he left school at 14 and went into, culinary world. But, now the man in my life for the last 20 years is very different. He's a industrial engineer, and he's very funny. He's English, and he helped raise the kids as well because they were young when we split up. I think Cameron was just turning 10 and Byron is 5 years younger. And so, it's very interesting. I never got married with the intention of getting divorced, but hey, sometimes
nobody ever does. I've been married for 36 years gloriously. I'm
tough.
I'm very fortunate.
Last night at the restaurant, we celebrated somebody's 60th anniversary and somebody's 50th. And my parents were married for 67 and a half years till my mother succumbed to lung cancer. So I think that's a huge accomplishment. I think that
but I waited. I was 35 when I got married. I maybe wanted my hand in the candy jar longer. I don't know, but
no, I think it's good when men.
My soulmate.
That's actually the age I often tell people. I think men shouldn't be married till they're 35. I was 30. My older son was 26, but they knew each other 8.5 years, and then they waited 7 to have a baby. And my younger son keeps telling his present girlfriend, don't expect me to propose until I'm 30. And she was, okay. But we do want to talk about the restaurants or what? Or we
absolutely. Now, what I want to ask you first and foremost was when you met Wolfgang and you're in college, is that right? And you're in this.
I was at university, yeah.
Okay, where were you at university?
Well, I had left. I was at NYU, then I was at New school, I was at UCLA. I was a lot of places. By then, I had left Berkeley, and by then I had come to LA. I went to Northridge because UCLA wanted me to go in the physics department instead of the biology department. I said, I'm not going into the physics department.
Okay, so you're a New Yorker, and
I'm a New
out,
Yorker,
and
yeah.
you come out to California, and you've got this, left brain thing happening, biochemistry, experimental psychology, or whatever you're calling it, and you meet this guy,
But
and
I'm shaking my head at you because I need to correct you for 1 second.
correct me, please.
Because actually, I went in at NYU. I was there on a scholarship and a government loan, and I worked 3 jobs. But I was there in the theater department, and I designed lighting and set design, everything very creative and artistic. But one of my jobs was in the acid-base laboratory at Roosevelt Hospital, New York City. And I started getting very interested in science. So I am not a big proponent of this idea of left and right brain. I believe that, I see all my doctor friends that, one of my friends that went into the Peace Corps, he used to carve wooden cars for kids and things. And yet he's a pediatric oncologist now. I think people can be more 3-dimensional than that.
Well, you are certainly. I mean, and I've admired that over the years about you, particularly. You're not, really a designer, although you're known as a designer. And now I understand your root was really in theater when you were first looking around. What am I going to do with my life? But so New York theater got you kind of titillated a little bit into the world of creativity.
But I was always creative as a child. I was also rather quiet. I was a ballerina as a little girl, and I used to like to sit and cut up things and make.
Wait. Say that one more time. You were quiet?
I was quiet. I had 2 brothers. I was the middle child.
I was a middle child.
Yeah, well, but what were the other 2? I was the cheese in the middle of the pieces of 2 white bread. The white bread slices.
I hear you, baby. Excuse me.
Yeah. But I was very in my own head. I used to think a lot, and I used to like to make things a lot. And so, as my mother used to say, I was the easy one. I was very easy to take care of because I was always doing things myself.
So you're self-sufficient.
I was then, I still am.
Yeah, that's what I understand. So getting back to, again, the early days, and you meet Wolfgang Puck, and he's coming on to you with all that stuff. But when did you really get into the idea that we're going to collaborate?
Well, this really has, I just want to say, you can read about some of these things, but I'm going to tell you personally, Will.
That's why you're on the show, Mr. Restaurant, so you can talk.
No, Mr. Restaurant, I realize that. We met about a week and a half later. I was already writing all the prose for his first cookbook that he had to deal with Knopf. And I was writing things like, a chef is like a painter, collaboration is painting its ingredients and blah, blah, blah. It's a beautiful thing. I have it all saved. It's like a little piece of poetry that they edited down. And then in the afternoon was the only time we really had an opportunity to see each other between lunch and dinner service. So
this is when he was at Ma Maison.
Yeah. And I would go over, and he saw one of his waiters on TV cooking a dish. He goes, wow, what is he doing? Why is he cooking this dish? He does not even a chef. Why is he doing this? I don't understand. And he was promoting the waiter race. And I said, so I looked at him, and I could tell it bothered him a little. I said, you want to be on TV? He goes, yeah, I would like that. So I called up my friend, Donna Rosenstein, who was in the business, who put me in touch with Lillian Mizrahi, who was one of the first showrunners ever. You know what a showrunner is?
Absolutely. They get the show on the road. They get that television or movie going.
No, she's the one that would get the guests for the show. And she was a freelance showrunner, and she was one of the very first, really, truly the very first. And I called her up. I said, hi, this is Barbara. That for 2 years, she didn't know, not because I was hiding it, that I wasn't his manager. She thought for all that time, now we're friends. And we put him on a show. And listen to me, the girl that didn't know anything. I said, I'd like it to be national TV, not local, and like in as many markets as possible. But,
it's a good problem to have.
No, but I'm like, talking off the top of my head. and that happened, and we put him on with Mr. Collins there.
Good Morning America, was it?
No, Good Morning America. You know, in the documentary that's on, it always says Ovitz put him on his TV for the first time. That's not true.
That's a documentary called Wolfgang.
Yeah, but I put him on TV for the first time. By the time that came to be, he had already been on TV on these various shows, and so they had footage, and then he went on.
And this is pre-Spago.
Pre and yeah, I would say pre-Spago. No, then post-Spago too.
What I'm
he had Good Morning America ran. I mean, I was on a Good Morning America with him once too. I did a dish called Till Death Do Us Part. He says, you can't do that. I said, I can do whatever I want. They asked me to be on this time.
A scary dish. That sounds like a scary dish.
2 quails and blood orange sauce. And I said, oh, I'm doing this. He said, no. I said, oh yeah, I am. I'm doing this. And we had the host and I, we had such a good laugh over it because she got it. She understood it.
You know, I could not eat quail now. I live in Ojai. I do
see the little quail.
We have quail in our backyard all the time, and we just simply cannot eat.
Okay, I haven't
can't eat lamb. We see lamb down the street.
I don't eat cow since I was 15. Beef, I can't eat pig, pork, because my friend has a little pig, and they're so smart. They're the 5th smartest animal, apparently. They're as smart as dogs or smarter. No, I cannot. So I too have issues, and now I've given up octopus prior to my octopus teacher.
That was a great film.
Unbelievable film. There's so much we don't understand about nature and the mechanics and the intelligence of animals. And
I won't eat an edible flower when it's presented to me at a restaurant. I just no, I don't eat flowers. Sorry.
Can't I don't believe that.
Just kidding.
I know, of course you are. The nasturtiums are great. They have like a mustardy taste.
Is nasturtium what creates capers? Are capers from nasturtium?
You know, I don't know. I have to claim ignorance on this one. I'm going to go look it up after.
We're going to look it up after the show.
Yeah.
All right. Now, Barb, can I call you Barb? No, Barbara. It's Barbara. You are Barbara.
You can call me Babette.
Ooh. My Babette.
Yeah. I had a French boyfriend at one time, so I made him call me Babette. Anyway.
All right. Well, I'm going to call you Barbara, the fabulous Barbara Lazaroff. And Barbara, I still want to get back to one thing. The creative process when you and Wolfgang together said, oh, you're giving me the high sign, Dr. D. This is a big story coming up. I got 2 minutes right now before we break.
Okay,
right.
It's very quick. It's very quick.
Tell me quickly about how you and Wolfgang said, let's open a restaurant.
Wolf wanted to open a restaurant. It was it's akin to, I want to be on TV. I said, oh, you want to be? And he was talking about, one day I would like to, we were in bed. All the conversations happened in bed. I want to open. I said, oh, he goes, I want this pizza oven. I want to put in a And so I picked up the phone, and it happened to be 4:10 in the afternoon, and the fire inspector had just gotten back from his tour. I managed to reach the fire inspector, try to do that these days. And I explained it to him, and he said, well, lady, is the oven going to be available to the guests? Can they get near it? And I just quickly thought, and I went, no, we're going to put a counter in front of it. I mean,
you had envisioned the open kitchen.
Well, look, the open kitchen was envisioned by all of the restaurants you pass on the highway. The American diner is the open kitchen.
Okay.
This is the open kitchen at an elevated level.
You were inspired by the diner.
Well, Wolfgang had experience in the south of France and other places with these little pizza ovens. He had seen them in little restaurants. So he thought that was a cool idea. But he also wanted to call the restaurant Vesuvio. And I said, over my so-called dead body, it's not, with red and white checked tablecloths and sawdust on the floor. I said, that isn't happening.
If I recall, I think Wolfgang told me that spago meant, is it spaghetti or string? Is that what it means?
A famous composer gave him the name. It means, spago means a long, thick cord with no beginning and no end. And in Neapolitan slang, it means like spaghetti. So it has, that's why my poem, The Flame of Life, ends the way it does. With the idea that the flame of life is a circle and with no beginning and no end. it's
Wait a second. Your poem, The Flame of Life.
Mhm.
We're going to get into that in about what? We're going to break. We're going to break in 2 minutes.
We have to see a
Yeah.
fascinating commercial.
I want to hear. I want to hear about this Flame of Life.
No, we're going to see a fascinating commercial now, right?
Okay, I think so. Dr. D, are we going out now? All right, we're going to go out now. We're going to be right back with the fabulous Babette, BB,
Whatever you
Barbara.
will, while we're watching the commercial, you can whisper to me, okay?
Okay, Barbara Lazaroff for the hour with Bill Knox. I'm Mr. Restaurant. Thank you, Barbara, for being here. 2, 1, you're live. We are back now with the fabulous, incomparable Barbara Lazaroff, who is not lacking for words, thoughts, deeds. I can tell you she's done it all and still doing it. And I'm fascinated by you, Barbara, and your abilities in many, many different directions. Your design skill is incomparable. And I'm also fascinated with a poem you wrote many years ago, which I believe helped inspire the Spago in
Design, yeah.
Beverly Hills. Is that
Well,
right?
yeah, when I was thinking about the design of Spago Beverly Hills, which came
It's
after,
all interconnected.
yeah, whenever I design a space, I think of something deeper, what it's related to, what the demographics of who we're trying to attract, what level of cuisine we're serving, whether it's really fine dining or upscale casual, or the cafes. The cafes are based on the Great American Quilt. And when I had to present that to Disney, you're in a room with hundreds of people and everybody, Cirque du Soleil, myself, you have to give your spiel. You have to explain what is your vision. So that was based on the Great American Quilt, and I did the tiles and the carpentry, which I won the DuPont Award for being able to make the carpet look like tile after we couldn't put tile everywhere. But with Spago, we had Spago Hollywood, and then I created Chinois the following year, which is still going, 39 and a half years old, our Asian.
One of my favorite all-time restaurants, I can tell.
I just remodeled part of it myself, and it looks the same, except new lighting, new art, new bathrooms. I put a new roof on it. The Spago, for me, and the idea of the kitchen and the idea of when I design something at home, something home kitchen or a home, the idea is the kitchen is the hearth or the center of everybody gravitates to the kitchen when you're cooking and people are around and they're waiting for the food, and people schmooze around the kitchen. So the Flame of Life poem it means a number of things. The flame of life is the passion for excellence. And when I say that, it's not like sexual passion, it's the passion to exceed and to do whatever you're doing to the best of your ability. And that's why the fountain I used to have in the back, in the patio, that was designed by an artist friend of mine, it had on 21 languages, it had the word passion in it, but we had to keep looking for the words in Italian and Greek and even Native American that meant excellence and not that. And so the flame of life creates, the flame of love inspires, the flame of passion seduces our soul. But passion in terms of what your purpose in life is and what you want to accomplish. The flame of compassion heals, because I'm very much about the community and philanthropy, and I've been doing things ever since I was a little girl, because my mother was very much, we had nothing, we were working class, but she always helped the community. So the flame of compassion heals. The flame of curiosity and knowledge illuminates, because education was such an important thing, especially Jewish family. I think Asian families, very important to us, about that's your way out, education. And the flame of friendship and laughter sustains and renews. Hey, my girlfriends have gotten me through a lot, and I hopefully have gotten my friends through a lot. And the flame of love is inexhaustible. Oh, the flame of hope is inexhaustible, because what do we have in life? Things happen. It's not always, you're not always in an up mode. I've lost loads of friends of mine. And then the flame, then it pertains to the restaurant, to the flame of the bounty of the earth delights and fulfills all of that abundance that we have, even when, you know, things are lost to us in certain ways. There's an abundance of love, food, you know, friendship and whatever. And then the last line, the flame of life is a circle with no beginning and no end. And that sort of harkens back to the Spago and the idea that time goes on. And, you know, that idea we were talking about with a friend yesterday, when we leave this earth, if there's still somebody that remembers us, family member, child, grandchild, somebody we've done a kindness to, we are still here.
Oh, certainly the spirit is with us
We
forever.
remain.
There's no question about it. And I don't know that that's just a Jewish thought. I think it's
I don't think
universal.
so at all. You know, I have a April 6th, I have my 39th Passover Seder coming up at Spago. And the Seder, we do have, you know, we do have the ceremonial Seder, but we have the food and we have the klezmer band and the West Los Angeles Children's Choir. And we have all of this festivity. But what I have is Jews, Muslims, Christians, Hindu. I have people of all faiths and people who don't have a particular faith, all ages, and they come together in a communal way, and they find commonality, as opposed to the differences that people, especially of late in this country, that people have seemed to be pushing forward, the agenda of what separates us. I try to bring together what binds us together in terms of humanity, kindnesses, and we, of course, the money goes to Maison, which feeds the food challenged families in Los Angeles. So this is 39 years and it's sold out. We sold it out.
So I can't go this year. I can go next year.
But we're expecting you next year, Will.
I'm going to be there.
You know, William is my younger brother's name. So,
you know, I was always Billy growing up.
He's Bill now too. He's Bill.
You know, I've got the Billiness in me still, but I didn't like the name Bill when I was in college. It was Bill.
I understand. Will's a good name. Will's a good name, but you know, you boys, you men always have a little Billy in you.
You got to have a little Billy.
We all have to have a little child in us. Something quick on that. You know, no matter what age we are, we remain 2 and 4 and 6 and 10 and 12, because all of those ages are a part of us. So what allows us to get to where we are all those experiences, the culmination, you know, of all those, you know, things that have happened to us and that we've shared with other people. So we remain all those ages, always.
I think so. And I think if you give that up, you've given up the essence of who you really are, because they started that way. And, you know,
yeah, I think that
you'll stay that way in the spirit. It's
very sad to repress
the next dimension.
Yeah, to repress that joy of life and the joy of experimentation, of adventure in a person. It's one should never do that in a child or a partner or anyone.
Well, I went with Will because I came to LA ostensibly to pursue an acting and producing life, and I didn't want to wait on tables, so I ended up getting into real estate. And I thought, you know, Will has much more I guess depth, because when things get tough, which they inevitably do, I could at least live up to my name and just keep going with willpower. And that's really what's driven me.
That's very good. But Will, why didn't you find me a space that didn't need as much work?
The place we found was called
Kafka's.
There you go. Okay. Kafka's
Armenian restaurant. It had a sunken bar.
You got it.
I thought I was going to have to get, I know you can't use the word midget anymore. So little people, little persons to wait on people. But what I did instead was I lifted that, ripped off the roof, ripped off the drywall and everything until I had the rafters there. So it wasn't that the rafters were so aesthetically pleasing, although I made them that way. I added things to it and whitewashed them, but I needed the ceiling space. But, you know, I have a quick story, oh my God, it just went blank. At in New York at the famous Carlisle.
Yeah. Bobby Shortland.
Bobby was
speaking of short people.
Yeah, that's right. I should have remembered. I just watched the documentary on the Carlisle for the 3rd time. Bobby Short walked me around the restaurant after it was completed. We'd been open about a year, and he told me, oh, you know, Sinatra sat there, and Cary Grant was over here when I was playing, and this one was over here. My piano was over here. Oh my God. I just loved that half an hour with him. And then years later, we had all the, Swifty, he liked to be called Irving, though, Irving and Mary Lazar parties, the Oscar parties that predate the Vanity Fair parties. And there it was again. I had Sophia Loren and Cary Grant and Madonna and Michael Jackson fighting like they were an old married couple because he put his chair on top of her cut on the bias white swath of satin with the fur on it and whatever. And and Audrey Hepburn, who was by far, when people say who was the most wonderful person, I go Audrey. Doesn't take me but a moment. Audrey Hepburn, and Kirk Douglas and Jimmy Stewart was a doll. And I just met kings and queens, so many presidents. Some I'd like more than others, except some whose politics I didn't like were actually pretty nice people in person, but didn't like their politics. But I've met so many people, and that has been a great joy. But I am going to say this truly. I have enjoyed everybody as much as I've ever enjoyed any so-called celebrity, because I just love people. And I just like nice people and kind people. And I can't say that everybody I have met who's been well known has been that nice.
Well, you would like to have people in your restaurants that you would want in your own home.
Exactly, because
Like Michael McCarty said to me, he said, this is always a party. A restaurant's a party. And I don't want people around that I wouldn't personally dislike, big or small, big or tall, whatever it is,
Absolutely. And
Dr. D, you're giving me the high sign. Does that mean a minute? Okay, we got a minute to finish this little bit of tidbit that we're talking about. But
okay, and we're going to have another fascinating commercial.
Well, we're going to have some more. Yes, we're going to have another fascinating commercial. But
but really, I want to tell you, I know you've interviewed Susan Feniger. I love Nancy Silverton. I love Mary Sue Milliken. I'm very involved with, I like to be involved with No Kid Hungry. I've been on the board of Sheba Hospital in Israel that helps everyone in Israel for 25 years.
Such a lightweight, Barbara.
No. What I'm saying is that to tell people out there, just find something small,
Yes.
find something larger, and just do something in your community. It doesn't have to be money if you don't have it. It can be your time. It can be a product. It can be whatever. Like my dishes that I sell on Amazon, the Flame of Life plates, I give 100% of the money to various charities in different months. Like if I'm doing an event, I'll do that charity, but often to Maison, Sheba, Hebrew University, No Kid Hungry. I've raised money for, but it has the flames on it, and it has a line of the poem, different line of the poem on each plate. But that's what I'm saying. You can create something, or just work in your kid's school, help in the community.
But have the passion.
The flame. Right? Have the flame.
That flame. It all comes back to the flame of life. We're going to come back to Barbara Lazaroff after a brief break, right, Dr. D? Okay, Barbara.
Dr. D.
We'll be right back with Barbara Lazaroff. I'm Will Knox on Mr. Restaurant. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good.
All right. So, Barbara, we've talked about The Flame of Life, your poem that really has inspired a lot of your own personal life. You sat down and you wrote a poem in 1996, when you were really on your way already. And
yeah, but I've written before that. I wrote a lot of poems that were published.
Okay.
And, I had published some poems that are not as uplifting as these. Some were sad, some were very introspective, some were, fun. I've also written some children's books that have yet to be published because I went to publish them. And then I wound up having to build 6 restaurants one year and another 6. So
that's a bit of a distraction.
A little bit. So I've actually taken them out recently. One is about a chef from Budapest and his little daughter, and another is about these guppies, and I have one about this family of dogs that live around the world. I have a lot of ideas because I collect children's books and I love them so much.
What is it about children's books? They inspire the little child within you that you say we all have?
I think they are, well, they can be fun, mischievous. They can be very teachable element, things. They're
You like
fanciful.
Dr. Seuss growing up?
I love Dr. Seuss. In
Yeah, I
fact,
did
the
too.
first person I showed my children's book to was Jed Mattis, Dr. Seuss's agent, who really loved them. So then I went off to Random House to the children's. That's another story, another time. But I started illustrating them. And there's where, you say people seem to be very secure. I felt insecure about my drawings, but recently I had a very talented artist friend of mine, Mimi Feldman, look at them and she goes, I don't know why you want me to do these for you. These are really good. You should just finish them yourself and do them. So I don't know. We'll see. But that would be so much fun to just be able to sit and write children's books, because I like to write funny little poems and ditties, and all
Well,
of these rhyme, but they don't need to rhyme.
but don't you get lost in the creative process when you're designing? I mean, is it somewhat
Well,
similar to the
absolutely.
writing process where you're sitting alone and you're sketching and you're thinking?
You're
What
doing
drives that
that.
for
It's
you?
alone, but it does not become an alone process. Being a writer can be very much an alone process until you take it to your editor, for those
Right.
people that are real, that do this for a living. When you are making a restaurant or home, you have hundreds of people, literally. Granita had 120 artisans that I hand
This
selected
is
to build
Granita
it.
in Malibu, which
Yeah,
unfortunately
the
is gone.
terrazzo, the tile, everything was hand extruded. Everything was, I even helped make some
Gorgeous building.
drink. And the light fixtures were hand blown, and I didn't like them, and we did them again, and we didn't like them, and we did them again. And then the sea anemone tanks and the various things, and the kitchen layout, and you have to work with the kitchen equipment people, and the chefs. What do you want? How do you want your line to be? And then you have, oh my God, then you have the inspectors. You have to pass code. You have to have all the various things that pertain to life and safety. So people think, like, they would come into the restaurant after it was completed and they would say, oh, you did such a pretty job, or wow, this is beautiful. But they don't understand that there's a lot of grit and sweat and detail. And that's where, having a mind like I had at the, then saying biochemistry or something, it's a very exacting process. If you don't, if you're working with an architect or whatever, yeah, the first restaurant I did, Spago Hollywood, I had no architect working on it. And if those plans hadn't been correct, you can't fit the equipment in, and Chinois, oh my God, every time I would order things, Wolfgang at one point wanted the kitchen out more. He wanted another piece. So I finally had him sign off with his signature on the plans and say, there's no more changes, because this is just the change orders are too expensive. And I've
Cost
already,
overrun.
yeah, now I had to order new chairs because the chairs that I was thinking about no longer fit. And that's the other thing. You're looking at a space and you have to think about it from a restaurateur standpoint of how many seats, what are we going to generate that evening in revenue? How many turns do we think we're going to have? So how much room do we need? And all the rest of it. You have the room for the mise en place in the back. You have to have the room for the front kitchen line with an open kitchen. You have to have the room for the workstations, the service stations, the bar. So I'm saying it is not just a matter of this alone creative process. It takes the HVAC people, the air conditioning and heating people, the lighting elements. And so I was the difficult lady that always said, don't you dare think you're putting an HVAC tube, a heating,
Yes.
where my lighting is. So I would do the reflected ceiling plan first. I go, here's the lighting, you got to go around it.
But now you're not classically trained. I mean, did you go to school
No,
originally?
I was
Yes.
not. Here's the thing. I now have a license. I study. No,
A.S.I.D.
no,
Society
I
of
have a
Interior.
CCIDQ license, which is a California license. Then once you have that and you pass other exams and you've worked for like at least 8 years in the business minimum, or you've gone to a 4-year accredited school, you can apply for A.S.I.D. And so I'm a member. And so every year I have continuing education. Every 2 years I have to earn a certain amount of credits to continue my license. That's important. A lot of designers and decorators and whatever, and I make a differentiation there, are not licensed or accredited. but I'm I'm a good academic. I
Well,
learned.
but you're also very intuitive too, from what I gather. You really work from your own gut level of this is the way I think I visualize this. Like for instance,
Yeah.
does the chef, whoever the chef you're working with, have the menu initially and then you go out and say, let's find the venue? Or do you have the venue first and say, let's do a menu shaped around the idea that we're going to be at this building in Malibu, for instance?
I mean,
How do you
obviously,
create that?
this is akin to the question of, does the music come before the lyrics, or the lyrics come before the
There
music?
you go.
In terms of, somebody hears music and other people write lyrics to it. Somebody sees, if you're writing music for a movie, you have to see the action and they're putting the music to it. In the case of a restaurant, clearly, if you're placing your restaurant in Malibu or somewhere by the sea, you're going to have a lot of fish dishes. You're going to have you want to illuminate the idea of the fresh fish. If you're inland, some fish, maybe other things. Maybe if you're somewhere in a state that has a lot of good beef, I like that.
Let me interject here for
But I wanted to finish. Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead. Go ahead.
But it's both. If you have a very strong owner chef, he could have, or she could have her own vision of, I want this to be very casual or very homey, or I want this to be very modern and clean, or whatever. And your job maybe sometimes is to guide them to make it a little bit warmer or to make it work, because there's still elements that have to work in terms of functionality. So you have to respect that.
So when an idea like Eureka was hatched, who came up with that Eureka moment?
Well,
1 minute. Oh, another commercial. Geez, we can keep. All right, keep going. Let's go.
We can start with, I'll end it after we come back from the
Yeah,
commercial.
we'll start it and we'll end
It
it.
was a group of people that came together that wanted to do this brewery, and they were doing the beer end of it. And we had a beer meister or whatever. And we had this big space. That restaurant, like Granita, like Spago Beverly Hills, Eureka, I built from the ground up. Big thing. We were going to put the fermentation, the big tanks
The big tanks.
Three of them. The rest of the fermentation cellar was in the back, the real fermentation area. The ones that were in the front, the beer was basically made. When we come back,
there we go.
The rest of the story.
All right. Well, we're going to hear more about that story of Eureka and how that came about, but it's really all related to the process of Barbara Lazaroff and your brain and your passion and your heart. And color plays a huge role.
I am a color lover. Yes.
Okay. And I want to get into that right after this break, which is our last break, Dr. D. So how much longer do we have? Another 10 minutes with Barbara?
Barbara, you didn't know, Dr. D, Jeremiah's having me come back in 2 weeks. We're doing chapter 2.
Okay. There we go. I could do chapter 10 with you, Barbara Lazaroff, for the hour with Will Knox and Mr. Restaurant.
Okay.
We're live. We're back with the illustrious and very colorful and never dull Barbara Lazaroff. Barbara, you were in the midst of talking about Eureka and that creative process.
Eureka Restaurant and Brewery was 28,000 square feet. 8,000 of it was a restaurant. 20,000 of it was a huge open space in the back that was going to have these fermentation tanks. And we had some, and we were supposed to develop and develop and develop. And the restaurant legally sat under something called the LA Brewing Company, the auspices of the LA Brewing Company. So when we had some problems with the brewery portion and the restaurant was grossing $5 million a year, we tried to separate it, but it was too late. That's the technical, legal, whatever issue. A lot of breweries came.
So it was a successful restaurant.
It was a very successful restaurant.
Which would still be going today, do you think?
Yeah, I think
weren't for the brewery.
Yeah, it was very cutting edge. I think
gastropubby,
but huge. It was
yes.
Not a little tiny gastro, but I mean, it was very elegant. I must say so myself. everything was
You
based.
don't say it. Who's going to say it? You're the one that created it. For
Other people said it. Other
All
people
right.
said it.
Well,
It's
you're
like
entitled to say
it
it.
was like when Italian Vogue spoke about Granita and other things, and when I won the Platinum Circle Award, which is like the Hall of Fame of designers in '99. So other people have said it will, but I will say myself that it was very elegant. It was all based on Charlie Chaplin's, in a way, Metropolis, all the gears and the moving
Oh,
parts.
the modern times element. That's the idea.
Modern
Right.
times.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so I had this Cinnabar company. I designed with them a big wall kinetic art piece that was 120 square feet of this, 120 linear feet with working line on it, lights and things in the whole city from Venice all the way to Hollywood, all the iconic stuff. It's in my storage, actually. And then on the little line, I had little brewmaster, with the bottles going by. So everything.
How does that come to you? This whole craziness?
Because I wanted something that I always want, no matter where you look in a restaurant, that you have something interesting to look at. Because if you're sitting in a different, your perspective changes all the time. If you look at the
wherever you are in the room.
Yeah, in this case, everything was insular. You didn't have a garden or an outside view. The same thing like Granita in Malibu. We're by the ocean, but we don't have a ocean view. So I created the entire ocean in the inside with everything in the restaurant subtly leaning to the right in a clockwise direction. The tile work up in the second skylight, there was a water dappling effect that slowly made a water effect. And everything subliminally, people realized, felt like they were underwater and everything was moving. And so with Eureka, the idea was even the wall paint, even something as simple as the wall paint. I had a friend, the Engels, who had a huge recycling plant, a recycling, we'll call it a dump yard, but it's not. It was very expensive. And he had lots of copper there and gigantic. I mean, I'm talking about 36 and 48-inch gears that came off of big machinery, and he gave them to me. And he gave me ground up copper and copper filaments, and I threw them. The walls were wet, and we threw them on the walls so they glistened. And then I had art made for it, and I had these huge posters, like vintage beer posters that I found, and everything, and even the blocks, the glass blocks. I had my girlfriend Polly Giselle etch gears on it and elements. And in the floor, we set one gear into the cement and with the concrete around it, into the slate, all of it. So even like there and at Spago Beverly Hills, the flames, when I designed the chairs, were carved into the back of the chairs. I won an award for the carpeting because it had the flames.
Barbara, I'd say there's not an award you haven't won.
No.
Resume and
no. And you know what, Will, I don't actually need to get. I don't need to have
the accolade.
I don't, because I know when I've done a good job or when I could have done better or whatever. And sometimes, I will say though, that sometimes when you don't have the money in the budget you need, you sometimes come up with something even more creative.
You're forced into the corner. You just got to make it work. When I did a quick service concept, we had 175,000 to work with for our first unit in Century City Shopping Center. It was called World Links, gourmet sausages and hot dogs. And we just had to make that money work.
You have to make it work.
Into the corner.
If somebody hired me to do a whole chain of restaurants and needed them to be affordable at a certain, I can do it. But
because you're ingenious.
Well, they have to understand though, you can't have Granita or Eureka or Spago, the original Spago, all that gorgeous glass that I had designed with people up north and all of the hand-blown glass fixtures. They're in my home because Wolf wanted something very, very minimal. And so I said, fine, I created them all up, and I waited 26 years to do a beautiful kitchen in my house. We lived in a tiny little kitchen. You had to push the table one way to eat and the other way to cook. Seriously, when the kids were growing up, and 3 burners worked, that was it. So I pushed the house out 10 feet, built it up, pushed it over, and I built a little wine room, and I built an amazing kitchen. I have the most beautiful kitchen now and a beautiful bathroom that reminds me of Granita upstairs. And I incorporated all of the skylight pieces that are all floating glass. It's a patented process, floating glass pieces with the little flames in them that are curved and set. And I love
Well,
waking.
I would love to be on set with you. And eventually Mr. Restaurant's going to go much more immersive where we're just not in studio and on Zoom. But I would love to see that kitchen and really look at your design work, up close and personal. What's new for you? What are you now developing? What do you
Well, no,
even
what's new for me right now is my grandson.
okay,
I'm serious.
grandmama.
I am so,
What do you want to be called?
I'm going to be called Baba.
Oh, okay.
I'm being clever here.
All right.
Mama, Papa, Baba.
There you go.
That difficult. But the other reason is my closest girlfriend who passed away, her mother is called Baba and she's still alive. So all of the children and grandchildren and great grandchildren call her Baba. And to honor Baba, I want to be called Baba. But you know what? You know what I'm going to be called, Will? Whatever the heck the kid wants to call me.
If they call you for dinner, you'll be happy.
That's right. I don't care. So in addition to that, like I said, I have the children's books. I'm working on things. I'm in the restaurant. I'm at Spago or Chinois, but I'm in Spago a lot. We had that big, gigantic 400,000, 150 by 50-foot tent on Cannon. You're looking at the girl that got the wall up and then got the tent, who said we need tents
This
out
is
there.
during the pandemic.
Yes, and the tent came down December 31st. So I spent the last number of years of my life absolutely focused on dealing with city council, Beverly Hills were very kind, but you still have to get all the stakeholders to agree. So I became a politician. It became like it just politics all the
You
time.
consider yourself political by nature?
I am. I didn't enjoy this process, but I mean, in terms of the country, I used to belong to the Hollywood Women's Political Committee many years ago. Marilyn Bergman, the famous songwriter, and her husband Alan, he's alive. She's passed away a year and a half ago, 2 years ago maybe. And Goldie Hawn, Barbara Streisand.
You wrote The Way We Were, right?
Yes, and many other things. The Windmills Over Mine. Oh, so many songs, and all the Yentl songs.
Big hits.
I went to Washington many times and marched for women's rights and rights to our, So how do I feel about Roe? How do I feel about what's happened with women's rights to their reproductive, rights? I'm very upset about it. I have been working with that for a long time. We work to get women across the United States elected into Congress. And
how do you feel about what's going on in Israel right now? We got 2 minutes to end the show. Is that what you're telling me?
You know what, Israel?
That's a big story. That's a big.
Yeah, it's a big minefield. I don't think we have enough time to.
We're not going to go there because this is a restaurant show. It's really about.
Yeah, let's talk about the fact that people for centuries have been sitting around breaking bread, discussing ideas from art to politics, to sex, to love, to family, over the dinner table, the breakfast table, the lunch table, and that food and sustenance like that, and actually creating food has always been a vehicle for joy and conversation and communication. And
that's our soul. That's what it does. It just
it sustains us. That's what I'm saying.
Stimulates us.
That's why I do the Seder. I'm telling you, that's why I do the Seder at Spago, and that's why we did American Wine and Food Festival from Meals on Wheels. That's why I did the American Cancer Spirit. I named it California Spirit. I did that for 29 years. And I'm very involved in a lot of cancer organizations, even before anyone in my life got cancer or succumbed to it. And I just think that the food is something that brings joy, and I'll end it with some of our greatest and most sustaining memories are often around food. And that's why comfort food is so important. We remember what we ate at a particular moment. We remember where we celebrated somebody's wedding or their bar mitzvah or their christening or their whatever it might be. We remember what happened around that table. I remember what happened around my grandparents' table. So
my favorite of all was the coffee crunch cake in San Francisco at Blum's, because I grew up in San Francisco, and that coffee crunch cake just evoked enormous memories. And yesterday a guy I know, a food consultant, sent out the recipe for it, and it brought back all these memories.
Are you going to make it? Are you going to make it?
No, I'm going to go get it from Valerie Confections here in LA.
Okay, you're not going to make. Maybe we can
She
make.
took it.
You send
No.
it. Send it to me. I'll have Della at Spago make it for you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll send
Okay.
it to you. Barbara, before we go, what piece of advice would you give to a young person who's seeking a career as a restaurateur and or a designer like you?
I think the best thing is preparation, education, because these days with design, for instance, the tools, so much of it has to do the computer digitally and graphically and whatever. I would do that. I would go to a good design school. I would work an apprentice for people. I would get as much varied experience as possible. I think same thing with the restaurant business. I think a lot of people see these so-called celebrity chefs, Wolfgang maybe being one of the first, which is
Admirable.
I take a little credit for it.
I would say so.
Yeah, I think though that there's a misunderstanding. It's like that I used to write about this, the half an hour show where they see a law case get wrapped up in a half an hour, or a murder case, or anything. It doesn't happen that way in real life. So it takes time. So don't imagine you're going to be head chef of your own restaurant after studying at the CIA and working a couple of years.
But if a kid knocked on your door and said, I just want to peel potatoes, would you let him in if there's no room? Or would you say you got to wait 3 weeks until the next guy bails?
Well, you can't let everybody in because there's no room in the kitchen.
Right.
People can't apply.
That passion that somebody has.
Okay. We have people. Wolf hired people that were working in the kitchen at age 14 years ago, peeling potatoes and doing things, and then came back, summer work, and now they're still in our employ. There are chefs around the city that started that way, and Ari Rosenson, who is our, executive chef for the company, started as a very young person. So, so many people will tell you those stories of how they started. They need to work hard and be patient, keep their eyes open, get as much experience in a varied way as possible. Sometimes doing the caca work is the best experience of all, because my son just went to 2 of the most major restaurants in the world on the top 50, and they put him at all these various stations. But in the beginning, the first couple of weeks, he was doing a lot of peeling and cutting, and when they realized how good he was, he moved. But you need to pay your dues
and have the passion. If you don't have that passion, this is a tough business.
Endurance, that old expression that success is, what is it, 10% creativity and 90% tenacity. I don't know. Perspiration. Yeah, perspiration. But you have to work hard. You have to be tenacious. There are some enormous talents out there that will just rise to the top a little quicker. But you can open your own restaurant. Really? Do you know how to run the business end of it? You can be great in the kitchen and mess up in other ways. Who's going to be out front? Do you have the right staff? You have to put the right team together.
I think to your credit and Wolfgang's credit, I go into the restaurant still, and you are working the floor. You are there. He is there. It's not just in name. And I really admire that. And I think the most successful of the restaurateurs I know, they're in it. They're in their restaurants. Okay. Yeah. They're not passing it off to, the executive chef or the maitre d' or the, chef de, you're looking at it.
Since I don't travel around the world and visit all the other restaurants the same way, I'm in Chicago a lot. So and Bella Lonsman, our partner and chef at Chinois, she's there all the time. And our chef, Renee, and Bella is like, I always joke. I said, if we had 10 Bellas, I could retire. Meaning she could be everywhere. I
don't think you would want to retire, though. You're not that type of personality.
No,
are you?
No,
not your shrink.
No. But it's also nice that I took my first consecutive 3-week vacation last year for the first time in my life.
Where'd you go?
I went to Europe. I had family, people, friends to see. My godson is in London. I went, and this time, I went to visit Byron this time, France and Vienna, so I was gone for a little bit. But I went to see what it's like to be not working for 3 consecutive weeks. And I can say I actually did like it, because usually when you go away and you're gone for a week and a half or 10 days, by the time you relax, you're not really relaxed. And by the time you get back, now I'm going to Spago, Maui soon. And
poor baby.
no. I have a hard, it's beautiful there. I have a hard time sitting around though.
Okay, I got a quick question before we fade out for the day. And that is, if you could sit with anyone other than, well, I guess, have you sat with the Obamas?
I haven't sat with them. I see them. I've talked to them. I was at the White House with him in a private room with 14 people one time, not in the White House, next to it. But I got to ask a question. They've come to dinner. We put them in the private dining room. I got to meet the children, the girls.
I'm jealous. I'm really jealous.
I met the Obamas. I met a lot of people. Yeah.
But if you could now sit with anyone, dead or alive, actually, who would you have a meal with?
I still would have a meal with Audrey Hepburn. I'm telling you, she was amazing.
Was she just elegant?
Beyond elegant.
And smart?
Very, and compassionate. Her work with UNICEF was amazing.
Yeah, UNICEF.
She came with Givenchy, who was the most elegant man I've ever met. Givenchy was unbelievable. But you kind of caught me off guard, because there are a lot of people, and since I'm a real science nerd, I mean, completely.
Bill.
Oh, I still read. I get all the genetics.
You can't take the kid out of you.
No, it's not a kid. I get all of these special medical magazines that basically go to doctors, and I read all this stuff. Nobody wants to listen to me, but I read this in a medical journal. There are some doctors that, and I had a 7-hour conversation with an infectious disease doctor almost 4 years ago at Spago. We were open for lunch, and before the pandemic, from lunch through dinner with him. He's the head of infectious disease at USC. He's from Europe. It was so fascinating. We couldn't stop talking.
Well, fascinating to you, but somebody like you is fascinating to me. So there we go.
Thank you. When people invite me to, like, somebody's getting a medical award, one of my friends' husbands or wives, whatever, they go, oh, sit Barbara with him. He'll just talk, or she'll love it. Barbara will love it. That's what they do with me. Because I'll go, really? Like, I met one of the guys many, many years ago who invented the pump for diabetes that people wear, and I go, yeah, and how did you think about that? And how did you, because I used to have this radio show called Exuberant Living. I loved interviewing people, because the same way you're asking me, well, how did you think about that? I'm always fascinated how people's minds work and how people come to that revelation, or where did that idea come from, and at what point, what trajectory did they go a different way? Or because when I was in the chemistry lab, you have to do so many experiments that fail before you find out what might work.
Right.
Yeah. So that's life too. We keep happily failing along the way, and we never really get there, Will. We're always still learning.
Thank God. Stay curious, right?
We would be so bored if we knew everything. We're still always learning.
I hope so. That's what living's all about.
Yeah. And you're still, no matter what you think, in closing, how people always say, oh, if I could only just go back, I wouldn't do this, or I would change that. Well, we all know that on the time continuum, as they say, that everything else would change. So, and also you'd still make other mistakes.
Listen, we're in the fourth quarter. Let's not dispute that. All right. We're in the fourth quarter, but the game has many different nuances, and you can call a timeout, and you can certainly get to the finish and get that 3-pointer at the end of the game, and you win. So you just keep going, and you elongate as much as you can, and have fun with it.
Try to stay healthy and keep going.
God willing.
And that expression FOMO, fear of missing out. I came up with another one on my Instagram the other day. I said, what could I say? And I came up with GOMO. And I said, go out and meet others. So GOMO is mine. I just came up with that 2 days ago. So I'm going to say GOMO.
Well, I'm extremely ecstatic that you came to meet me today after all these many years. We've seen each other periodically, but to sit down and have a conversation, which I've never done
Nope.
for an hour, has really been a real joy for me and a real memory. So thank you so much for being
And
on.
Will, you're still an adorably handsome man.
You're very kind.
True.
You take off the mask.
So no.
Thank
No.
you so much.
Okay.
Barbara Lazaroff for the hour on Mr. Restaurant. You are indeed a sweetie pie. Thank you so much. Really.
Bye.
Thanks a lot.
Be well,
Over now.
everybody. Stay well.
Okay, we're clear.